Hey everyone, and welcome to the Best of 3 Call of Duty Esports podcast. I'm your host, Josh. SalvationsElite to my right is Bo3, and to our farthest right, per usual, is Rex Shady Nero. But not only that, if you're watching on YouTube, you already noticed there's someone in between. We got an IHOLDSHIFT sandwich going on over here.
Oh, in the middle?
He's in the middle today. We're rocking and rolling. And so we got really the best of 4 rocking today. Talking about some Rostermania, some challengers, a little bit of both, and just overall kind of the whole season, reflecting back on the CDL and challengers and talking about it all. So we got a lot to get into today. Obviously, it's going to be juicy and spicy with how much news has been coming down the barrel a little lately, but my goodness, there's a lot to get into. So without further ado, boys, I gotta ask, what's going on?
Well, Josh, I am feeling like a lion cub prowling around the savannah, and I'm thinking to myself,
of course,
where are my parents at? What is going on? And there's this giant, long-necked lion that's way taller than me, and I'm like, maybe its name starts with a G. It's got spots. Maybe it's a cheetah. It doesn't run that fast, and it bends down for water. Like, man, I'm thirsty too. And so I decided to join this new lion pride and really ingratiate myself within them.
Yeah, as one does.
And it really showed me a new way of living life and gave me a whole new perspective.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I mean, that's we're in the age of Rostermania, so the Cubs are finding their new homes, and so it really is beautiful. Man, I mean, Sam, how you doing today?
I just blanked out there. I don't know if there was a moral to that one or not.
I mean, and Shift, how are you doing today, brother? Welcome to the show.
I'm equally confused because that was, that's actually my favorite part of the show. I'm not going to lie. When Rex comes in with the hotness. And I was like, he's got one prepped for today. And then all of a sudden, just got a new view on life. All right, brother.
Yes, never's ever prepped.
Yep. It's going to be absolute chaos today. So, I mean, Shift, hop in whenever, just feel free. You're at home here. So just make it happen. So we got a lot to talk about today, obviously. I mean, again, you can watch on YouTube. You can listen on Spotify. You can listen on Apple Podcasts. You can drop a review on Apple Podcasts. You can drop a comment on YouTube. We always appreciate that. The layout of the show today on YouTube is going to be a little bit weird because I don't have the full scenes all set up. So it's going to be a little bit different than normal. But, that's the price we pay for having a goat on the show. Or should I say a cub on the show today with us. So, man, without further ado, I think we just hop straight into news of the week because today is going to be a wild one. So without further ado, let's hop into the news of the week.
The Call of Duty News of the Week.
Alrighty, the news of the week, and talk about a spicy one this week. And Sam, the sad music is playing, man. The music is playing. We're hearing the piano in the background. Rex, hit us with the news. What's going on, man?
Formal's retirement.
Oh,
Never
man.
thought I'd live to see the day, but here it is.
It's something else. Sam,
any thoughts?
Send it your way first, man. Obviously, you're the H4F guy around here. You got all the feels. So we're at 4 more now, man.
Yeah, I'm pretty much at this point out of tears.
It's just dried up.
I have to listen to the past like 70 some hours whenever he announced it, just crying. No, I personally, like, even in I just didn't think it was gonna happen. I thought he had at least one more year. Especially because what was interesting too was I think people forgot, like, at the beginning of the year, he stated this was one of his best CODs. Like, I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah,
but he was
Texas formal.
He was confident. He was so confident. And then just to see kind of that downward spiral. I don't know what honestly happened. He didn't drop the best numbers. He wasn't that bad, honestly. Just not who he normally was. But I don't know. I imagine some of that got into his head. I imagine he started to rethink some things and. I think there's still a question too of whether he did get dropped first before he retired.
That's the big one.
Timing about how that could have played out. Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll figure it out here soon. But the way Scump worded it on a stream where he said they parted ways with Dylan and Matt last night, and then he announced his retirement. After that, it's I don't know. So there may just been a combination of factors, and honestly, it just sucks. I don't know if he'll ever consider coming out of retirement, but I think he's just going to do content. So
I mean, do you think he'd skip a year and come back?
That's so tough, man. Like
it's tough.
It's just like one of those things that you look at some of the long-standing people that have been in the pro league and then fell out of the pro league for one reason or the other. Like there is not an easy path to get back. Like we're seeing it with methods right now. The conversation has been there with Parasite since pretty much ever. When it comes down to after World War II, really. So it's difficult, man. I think, you're going to see really a lot of instances, kind of like Karma at the beginning of this year played in a couple of Challengers Cups because you start to feel that itch when the game turns.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It would have to take a lot. Like we said the same thing about Karma last year after the first 2 Challenger Cups. Like it would have to take a lot for him to just immediately turn around after his retirement announcement and then come back to competing again. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
He tweeted like after Scump put out that clip of like the explosive rounds in Vanguard. He did tweet like nice year to skip or something along those lines. So he is trolling it at least, and like at least entertaining it a little bit in his head. Obviously, I'm sure you will. If a game comes out next year that's really like he loves, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up trying to give it a go again, but it'd probably come down to how the game was and his thoughts on it. And he probably wouldn't make that decision till more last second. So that would be really, really interesting to say the least. So yeah, that's something we definitely keep your eye on. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely going to impact things. Obviously that comes off the news of the whole, I mean, I guess let's just transition right into the OpTic NV merger. So we'll start off hot today.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
We'll start off hot today. So we had 2 massive crone bombs dropped on us. Obviously, one was the formal announcement. Then this one was the real crone bomb of the OpTic NV potential merger. So, I mean, at this point, a lot of the details have probably already been talked about in a lot of content. I made a video about it, and like I'm sure everyone's been already kind of has the whole idea of it. But basically, to summarize real quick, NV's buying OpTic. It basically comes down to their rosters be merging, and a lot of the day-to-day business operations would be taken over by the NV like business side of things, where Hastro has put a lot of his trust in those guys. It's been going really, really well. And then Hastro and Hex would work together to work on the content and team management side of things and working directly with the esports. So that would mean the OpTic name would be used for the CDL. Supposedly that would mean the Empire name would be retired. And then that's kind of where it comes down to like the potential roster of Shotzzy, Illy, Scump, and Dashy as a squad of 4 playing together again. So there's a lot to talk about here. I mean, what were your guys' initial thoughts? Sam, what was your initial thought when you heard this news the first time?
No, when I first heard this, I was like, is this like Hex selling out 2.0? Like, I mean, that's like the thing. He's done again. And so like I was really confused, but then you read the article that Crone wrote, and it seems the way it seems is that Envy is going to be using OpTic's name. Like Envy might be going away, which I don't know if that would happen though. And so the question is, you have these
it was a little unclear.
Yeah, like you have these 2 pillars as I think that Zuma stated that, but like these 2 OG guys. You have Hex and you have Hastro, and now they're under the same ownership. Like one of those guys is not going to give up their baby. Like
I think it seems like, at least from my perspective, that it's just the OpTic. Like where the OpTic, how Hex sold OpTic, the name OpTic, just OpTic to NRG to use as OpTic Chicago, but yet he still owned OpTic Gaming. It could be a similar situation like that, but like then the Dallas Empire name ends up hitting the bench. So that seems like a pretty crazy situation overall. But I mean, obviously that would be Hex kind of securing a little bit more of the bag, like selling, probably making a profit off what he bought it back from Immortals for, and then flipping it to Envy to make at least a little bit of some sort of margin on the flip, the 1-year flip. He's basically, he's turning like esports orgs into like house hunters, like flipping, like he's just flipping orgs.
Where's Chip and Joanne, dude? Get them in here.
They need to make a TV show, Flipping Orgs.
He's about to be buying the Paris Legion. He'll buy Paris and then he'll flip it next year. Like he's just gonna be out here flipping esports orgs. But I don't know. I mean, Rex, what was your thoughts?
Honestly, I had like a negative impression of it. I was like, this does not seem like a good sign for the Call of Duty League.
Okay.
Like when I first read about it, like I understand, I feel like it all came down just to financial reasons. And I think Adam Apicella kind of tweeted about it, just like how within, esports and everything, it's very much of like a tomorrow project, not something that's like, you're not looking for success today. It's for something like you're withholding for the future.
Right.
So, in my mind, that happening, it just didn't seem right and made it seem like things were really weak, especially if OpTic is selling out. It's like, this is our strongest brand. And now they're trying to it seems like they're struggling for money a little bit.
Yeah. I could see that. I mean, like, it does come off like it's like a bad sign for the CDL in a sense. Like, the best, biggest brand is like trying to sell out. But I mean, obviously, there's probably a tough time with the management situations. Obviously, more of that article talked about Hex's disagreements with NRG and how they wanted to run the business and those types of things. And they disagreed and basically ended up having basically a partnership split during the middle of the season, and like things kind of went downhill, and so it created for a lot of chaos. So Hex was kind of in a pinch where he almost had to sell or find an investor, but I don't think he wanted to give up the full control to somebody unless he really trusted him. And so it ended up being that Hastro was that guy. So it is interesting that it kind of plays out like that in a sense. And
well, they're dealing with some like really big dogs in the league too. Like, I mean, LAG has a lot of money. I think Subliners have a lot of money, and they probably have more than like these traditional like esports organizations. It's just probably hard to compete with people who have that kind of pull.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. Shiv, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the initial is the fact that like what happens with the Chicago spot was the immediate reaction that I have. And, I think overall, I think first and foremost, you look at NRG. Are they still going to retain that spot and then just rename back to the Chicago Huntsmen again? Like, there are so many questions about that. Yeah. But getting into the whole parallel of like OpTic Gaming, Envy, that whole thing, like, it would have to only be a Call of Duty thing. Like, there's no way Envy gets rid of like their Rocket League team name brand or their Valorant team name brand or, all the other plethora of games they happen to find themselves in. Whereas OpTic is literally at this point just Call of Duty.
Yeah.
You can kind of look back towards that whole merger from before, the first buyout, like, oh, they also lost their Halo squad and things like that. So, I mean, if the OpTic brand isn't making any money, I totally could see, parting ways with it. It's something about saying that like out loud doesn't feel right though.
No,
it's like,
well, he did say on a podcast, like, we were like the only organization to make a little bit of profit. Everybody else was negative.
From the CDL, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think Hex said in a podcast like a long time ago.
After Modern Warfare.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it was like very, I don't know. It could end up being a great thing, and maybe Hex is just like, I only really care about Call of Duty. Like, I don't care. Like, I care about other esports, but I don't care about them as much as COD. And he just wants to do COD, and it's just hard to make that sustainable. So maybe that's why he went with Envy. Envy will do all the other stuff, and he'll just be like, I'll do the COD things for you guys.
You wonder if they end up using the OpTic, because if it's just still OpTic, they could still use the OpTic gaming name for other esports. Like, if in case Envy wanted to start using, like, if they want to enter into Halo and then you have the OpTic gaming team in Halo or Gears or any of these games again, like, that could be interesting.
I may have missed it. Wasn't Envy a part of the Halo announcement from yesterday?
Oh yeah, they probably were yesterday with eUnited.
They were.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, so they're one of the initial partner teams. So even that seems like, okay, it almost feels like the only way that you could really rationalize what's happening right here, I think, is exactly what we're saying. Like, Hex just wants to focus on what's going on with Call of Duty. Obviously, him and Haster have a long-standing relationship, and if it's a situation where financially Envy could use the fan base, and beyond that, Hex could use a little bit more of that money that he purchased the brand back from, like, maybe there is something there. But I feel like this is it. Like, you're at that point where, like, you've reached culmination, unless you were eventually want to split off again and go do it. But I feel like that would have been at least more visible when NRG picked it up the first time around. Like, that would have been the thing last year. But I don't know.
That's the thing. I mean, like, it kind of creates a situation where you have like two hubs of Call of Duty. You have the LA hub with LA Thieves, and now you've got Dallas with OpTic officially now, which does make sense to kind of have those like two center points for COD to do the events there. I mean, we saw how crazy that Stage 5 major was in Dallas. So like, imagine now if it's an OpTic homestand, like our OpTic home series now.
OpTic Envy homestand in
Dallas,
in Dallas, who are like the best fans.
Exactly. So that could create, and maybe that was part of the interest that Hex had, like seeing the Dallas support there naturally for COD. That's possible. I mean, like, it's just crazy to think that we're not going to have the E Classico anymore in COD with no Envy OpTic anymore. That blows my mind to think about. And so that's just pretty crazy in my head, just to even consider that being a potential option down the road as well. I mean, to your point though about the Dallas spot or to the OpTic spot or the Chicago spot, I guess more specifically, Zuma did say that it's just Envy trying to sell, and that does not mean that they're just selling the Chicago spot. That it could be any city in the United States if a team wants to buy.
You mean NV or NRG?
Right? NRG is trying to sell.
That's what I meant to say.
Got
NRG.
you.
Yeah,
well, I mean, like the Chicago spot, like the 12th spot. It doesn't have to be geo-affiliated with eUnited.
I guess in my head, I was like, oh, interesting, the Chicago spot. But yeah, it could be quite literally any city in the United States. It's just it's just the 12th CDL spot. So that could also be interesting for some teams if they're looking to open up like, you know, a different, like a Washington, D.C. franchise or a Boston franchise or something like that where, you know, another big city that they feel like they have better roots in that could open up other options for orgs. So those are all options as well, obviously, that could come into play. And of course, there was the whole thing with eUnited that was trolling that they were buying a spot from Paris.
That was not good looks.
And they ended up trolling all the way to the end. They drew this thing out for 24 hours and then ended up announcing their partnership with Halo. So
I just like when you use Call of Duty gameplay for 24 hours or whatever it was in that stream. And you're only replying to Call of Duty tweets. Like, what are we supposed to think? I mean, and then like he obviously came out and like, you know, John, I think their marketing director came out and, you know, had something, but I kind of get like what they're doing. Like they were, you know, kind of going like, but at the same time, it's so bad too.
Can you say it didn't work though? Because we're talking about it.
We're talking about it. No such thing as bad publicity.
I mean, overall, I don't have too much of a problem with it, but it is kind of annoying that it drew out for that long. To be fair, that website Tease was lit, and I was definitely like in for that. But then when they did a 24-hour live stream of them streaming COD, like, come on, man! Like, at some point, it's a little insane. But
well, then like, what was like the like so it's like the whole Paris thing and the whole like creamy, delicious, light CDL thing. That was just all troll.
Yeah, all troll.
Oh man! Speaking of Paris, what is wrong with Paris?
Posted on the wrong Instagram account. Hello?
I know. Like, and then even that thing. I don't know. Like that came out to her, like where like their corporation or whatever was dissolved or whatever it was.
Yeah, their brand name and identity and all that.
It was just like, what? And I thought their social media. I'm like, wow, they're really picking up the social media, and I really liked what the guy was doing over there. Like he seems like he was like part of a fan, and he got way better at it. And then now this comes out. It's like, how? I feel like they were just making progress.
Yeah, it's honestly hilarious. Like the fact that, you know, all of those things come out. Like it's almost like we were fueling the fire for eUnited. Like it was like the community was trying to wish it into existence by searching for all these reasons for why it's COD. You know, like, dude, look, the Paris trademarks are gone. Like all of these things. Like, honestly, just hilarious that it ended up playing out like that. But it is still up for debate of whether or not, you know, Paris is actually trying to sell. It's been kind of the rumor for a while now that that's the case. Like in everybody's head, I guess in my head, it kind of makes sense that that's the case. But
I mean, they were MIA last offseason.
Yeah, that's the thing. They were really also just gone. So I mean, who knows? Maybe that's just kind of their thing. That just kind of gets them going, just being gone for a while. You know
what my conspiracy theory is? I feel like the CDL, like Paris wasn't doing anything. Paris like, I don't want to do anything. CDL kind of was like, we'll give you like a social media guy and like try and keep up the looks of it.
Okay.
I don't know. That's my theory.
Oh, that was it.
I feel like Paris just like is gone. Like the actual owner of it is just kind of like gone.
Good theory.
That's fair. I mean,
so I feel like Call of Duty, they start throwing him a few bones and like, we got to make it seem like these guys are around here still.
I love it. I mean, that's possible. So, I mean, we might have to bring back the What's Wrong with Paris segment here over the next few weeks if they end up still being
because it might not last for very much longer.
Exactly. That's true. That's true. There's a lot going on there.
If Paris does end up dissolving, we need to have like a formal like ceremony.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. Like some, absolutely.
I mean, your Paris gear is going to be worth a lot down the line.
Oh man. Yeah. Just the Paris and the Dallas gear with the Paris. Now we got Paris.
Dallas gear for sure.
Yeah. Any Chicago OpTic gear. I mean, all these. We got so many collectibles.
You guys remember that giant Reddit post that blew up with the guy that got like a giant Chicago Huntsman tattoo back in his forearm? He's got to be hoping so hard the Huntsman come back next year.
For sure. Could you imagine the comeback? Like, let's go.
Dude,
Tattoo's relevant again.
For sure. So I wanted to kind of give a little bit rundown of all the Rostermania craziness real quick so everyone's caught up on where we're at with Rostermania. So some of the craziness that happened over the last week that if we actually went into every single detail, we'd be here for 4 hours. I mean, Rostermania, let's start the Rostermania rundown here. All right. Crim dropped, Vivid dropped, Formal retired, Envoy dropped, OpTic merged with Envy, Surge, Paris, LAG, London squad wiped, except for Afro. Methods dropped, Diamond Con dropped, Looney retired, the Coaches Market, Revan, Nubsy, and Shane all dropped. Looney looking to coach. And did Aqua get a spot? There we are.
Holy shit.
So I'm surprised Revan got dropped. Like NYSL had like a pretty good year. Like, I don't know why Revan got dropped.
Okay, so here's my theory on this. I don't see a world that Revan and Krez don't stay together and they don't go back to New York. I think it's one of those things that their contract had run out and they're probably fielding, what else is out there, and kind of because there's no way New York pulls off those two. Like they have been such a stapled part of what that organization is, and that relationship I have to imagine is still very strong. So that has to be one of those things. It's like I won't say it's a bait for the timeline, but I think it is one of those things that they are going to shop around. As a team of two.
Yeah, they're testing the free agency market. It's kind of like an NFL player, just looking to see what else is out there, which makes sense. I mean, I think that's only a smart thing to do for sure. But yeah, so there were some big ones in there. Obviously, Looney retired as well this week, looking for coaching opportunities, and he's a legend in the scene as well. And so, I mean, I think all of us would love to see Looney get a job coaching somewhere. Obviously, he's got all the tools for the job. So he's got the mentality for it. He's got the skills and the reputation for it too. I mean, it all makes a ton of sense. And my original prediction was Looney would be the coach of OpTic, but then the OpTic merger happened. So, now I would imagine that's going to be Rambo, but it's hard to say.
What happens to Sender?
Right,
I was just about to say, what happened to Sender?
So all of that stuff still has to come out about exactly how that could potentially play out. But those are things to consider as well when we're talking about Rostermania. So thoughts on is there any of that news that specifically stuck out? Obviously, the Crim and Vivid stuff was like early on. Then we had Formal retire, Envoy dropped all in like that span of like 24 hours, basically, which was like a crazy span. And then none of the shocking stuff with the Surge, Paris, LAG, London squad wiping, except for Afro. And then Tej and Method and Diamond Con are free agents with Looney retiring. So was there anything specifically that stuck out to any of you guys about any of that?
I mean, just big names dropping out. I mean, I really am looking at the coaches.
Yeah,
Crim being dropped is huge. But he'll end up somewhere, you'd think, right?
I have to. There's no chance.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, we're going to be doing like the whole Rostermania segment here and just kind of talking about that all in like a few minutes. But kind of that was just the news breakdown. I guess we can talk maybe about some of the other Rostermania rumors, maybe on the, during our little Rostermania stuff at the end of the episode. So, all right, real quick, Crim was on the flank, obviously, and a little bit some conversations. Real quick, talking about some of these things.
No free shoutouts.
No free shoutouts. I mean, never heard of that thing before, but
what's that?
Yeah, what is that? Never heard of it. But obviously, it was weird timing that Crim ended up being on the flank tonight. I don't know. I just feel like it's a little bit too like coincidental that Crim is on the flank. I don't know. It just feels a little bit weird. He seems so low key and chill too. Like he's already got his roster figured out. That's why I'm getting a little like tin foily hat here that Crim's like got his feet up right now because he just seemed like he was chilling. But one thing he had an interesting convo about was contracts and talking about how he thinks 1+1s are terrible for the scene with their effects on Rostermania and with making orgs like kind of lackadaisical with trying to pursue players and like basically rewarding teams for waiting as long as possible to sign a squad because they get the cheapest players. So, I mean, I don't know. Where are you guys at with that and like the balance of like teams pushing for these big name guys versus just kind of like what Paris did last year, minimum for anyone they can get their hands on, putting their feet up and waiting 3 months. Like, where's the balance there? Like, how
French
do you feel
players
about it?
is what they said initially.
Exactly, right? Like,
are there 4 French players that are even out there? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, what are your thoughts on kind of like the contract situation and the overall situation on the scene right now?
It's a business, man. At the end of the day, it's a business. And this is the part that I feel like doesn't necessarily get talked about a lot, but inherently does get looped into the conversation and general sentiment about why people don't like what the CDL has done, because it does force these conversations to go to a boardroom more than just the inherent squad itself.
For
and
sure.
you're going to get people that are trying to do this, because at the end of the day, and we've seen this with teams like Paris, and I think you make arguments for other teams that are out there, you know, a la Seattle and even LAG, where it's, yeah, we want a team to be a part of this, but they don't really know the inner workings of esports at overall. So they still treat it like it's a business thing at the end of the day. They don't know, you know, what is the difference between a Crim6 and you know, a Looney? They might not know. It's like you look back at their resume, long list of careers. So like, oh, they're already a former professional player. So that's 1 for 1 when everybody else who knows in COD, Looney and Crim are not a 1 for 1 comparison, not just because they run different roles, but obviously skill is a totally different conversation. So I think that is inherently the problem. You know, that's part of the business that comes with having a major owner that isn't necessarily an esports organization. You get these big name teams and even LAG who have a limitless amount of money to spend, and sometimes they just don't do their due diligence to bring in the right people or have the right conversations, because LAG has the right people behind their COD team. But I think that's just part of the business, that these contracts get drawn up and they get executed on as if it were more like traditional sports. It's just the fact that COD is so small, esports in the scheme of things is so small, that they just default to trying to take as much as they can without paying as much as they can, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely puts players in a tough situation, because it's like, you know, I mean, on Crim used the example of Temp, like a guy who feels like gets absolutely royally screwed because he's a player who's talented enough to deserve more than $50,000 a year, especially if you're living in a city like New York or LA and having to like play, or downtown Dallas or something like that, to play COD. And it puts you even, it's like financially not rewarding enough in Crim's eyes for how much work these guys put in on a day-to-day basis, and time it takes, and how much of their life it takes away to play COD at a professional level, versus the amount of financial reward they're getting to play on a minimum contract. But a lot of the orgs are waiting to get those guys on a minimum because they can. So I don't know. Do you feel like that's ethical?
I mean, it's business.
Yeah, I was gonna say
That's really what it is. It's just it's business at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's fair. I can get behind that.
I don't want to get behind it, but I would have to say that's how you point your finger at why is this happening. It's simply that they want a team, and they want one that can be competitive, maybe not win the whole thing, and they don't really understand where that line is drawn between those two things.
No, yeah, I think that's kind of basically where it is. One thing that he talked about, one thing that Crim really didn't think that we're guaranteed to have a full 12 teams next year.
That's scary.
So he was laughing basically when he was saying it, and like NRG in Paris, he basically was saying supposedly don't want to keep their spots if they don't have to. And then Zuma, and then like they were asking, like, do they have to field a roster if they are in the CDL? Like, what's the contractual requirements here?
No idea.
And so Crim believed that, he said it would be at least 2 months before we hear anything about those teams, and that more than likely they would have a squad of 4 minimum amateur players on minimum contracts, was what Crim believed. So
I mean, like,
thoughts on that?
How lazy, like how just like disrespectful, honestly. I mean, not that like, saying the AMs are bad, but if their intention is just to get the 4 cheapest players just because they have to, that doesn't sit right with me.
That did last year. I mean, this is an organization that does not care.
Yeah.
They posted on the wrong Instagram account. Like, hello, come on.
When I saw that, I was like, how do you do that? Like,
and it stayed up there too. It's not like they deleted it and reposted it. It stayed up there.
Yeah, it's so bad. It's so bad.
And, you know, Sam, I'll let you get in this because I know you have something to say, but it's like, if Paris does this again, no one's going to want to play for them.
No.
Like, how many people in the AM scene got approached by teams like Paris this year and turned them down because they don't want to hurt their stock playing for an organization that doesn't care?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw a lot of people on Twitter roasting them.
Yeah. Like, it's insane from the start. Like, from the start of Modern Warfare, where, like, they just did not seem like they just didn't even want to do anything. They didn't want to make any changes, you know, from that original roster, then moving to the Cold War. They like didn't announce anything forever. They did that one fire emoji, you know, on Twitter. There wasn't even
It's how they announced fire. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no Paris merch this year at all, right?
None.
Yeah, they didn't even put out merch this year.
I just don't understand how you go into this league, spend 25 mil, and then your strategy is to do the bare minimum. Like what?
It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean,
to me,
truly,
it's just mind blowing. And you're right. Like when you say who would want to play with them, like or play for them, that's like a joke almost. And it's very unfortunate that one of the 12 teams isn't even a lot. And the fact that we're talking about going down from 12 when we're hoping to go up,
it's not good.
It makes me scared. Truly,
I mean,
want this league to succeed.
That they could. You wonder where the valuations of these, like how these negotiations go, because it's like, I mean, do you think a team like Paris's value has gone up or down since they joined the CDL? What would be your like
down?
You'd think down, right?
Would think so.
It's gotta be.
I mean, unless like there's some more trends pointing upwards, like behind the scenes when it comes to like viewership and those types of things or like revenue, like in-game revenue strategies that we don't know about for them to develop revenue like that for the CDL, which is something that Hex was talking about, before the CDL even started, but which took forever to even get going in the first place. But I think those things would get really, really interesting where that could maximize things. But I do think that, I mean, their spot's probably gone down. So maybe if someone's trying to buy in, they could potentially get that spot. And then suddenly, you have a cheaper spot than what you originally paid. And you could get into a city that's more relevant to maybe the CDL. I mean, Paris is just a tough city to build a brand on overall. Like, I think the CDL would be better off having like
Madrid
or even going United States and just going with like those Bostons or DCs or Philadelphias or something like that versus Paris. But Madrid would be great. That would be so awesome.
Sick.
Or Sydney.
Oh,
I mean, one of those two would be great. I would be all in on something like that. So I think we kind of all align on that thing for sure. So It is tough to say the least. The other thing that Krim said is that he guarantees that Tej gets a spot. And he kind of confirmed the OpTic Envy thing because he was like, talking about how he's called the biggest torture in the league when he got dropped for the biggest torture in the league, which he was talking about Dashy because he talked.
It's gotta be Dashy, right?
Because that's what he talked about last year as the biggest torture when he left OpTic in the first place after BO4. So, with that said, I think we can transition kind of into our conversation on challengers and the whole talk about some of these things and some of the biggest things of the whole season and formatting and all of the wildness that is challengers heading into next year as well. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's go.
John, one thing I can promise you, even in this market, is that I never ask my clients to judge me on my winners. I ask them to judge me on my losers because I have so few.
Oh, baby. All right. So we're talking some challengers. I mean, we have a lot of different directions we could go with this. Obviously, at some point, we're going to talk about some of the, since we are the whisperers around here, when we name a player, they end up in the CDL. So we have a lot of pressure on us today to name the right players, or maybe whoever we named us, that is now the right player. But so obviously, I think we just kind of want to start off on the whole season and maybe just talk about like the direction of the format and your thoughts on heading into a next year where we might, where hopefully we can have some sort of LAN events back and things like that at some point for challengers. Shiv, lead the way. What are your thoughts kind of on this year's format? The pros, the cons, and then heading into next year, what are you hoping to see?
Yeah, pros and cons. Pros, the Elite League happened. That's number one.
Yes.
I mean, we've talked about that a couple of different times on this, as you're going to see Dog here in the background.
Hey,
let's go.
Cute,
Dog.
dog.
Shout out. Oh, he's
Best of 5 podcast now, boys.
It's the best of 5
for sure.
So that's already biggest pro overall, is the fact that we've now started to establish a second tier. So it's not just the pro league and then everybody else. There is going to be at least some sort of an extra spotlight. Like I said, we've talked about that a couple of different times. Biggest con is the schedule's too rigorous. I think generally speaking, we saw a lot of the time, like throughout the late spring, players were clamoring like, hey, it's Mother's Day. Can we please have this weekend off? Or hey, it's Father's Day. Can we please have this weekend off? Like, it's just too much. And, for regions like APAC in Europe, where the rosters stay more steady, it's not nearly as transparent of an issue because you're still pretty easy to follow. But for the North American region, I think you still have to set up, and this was the reason I think where they set us with this, was like, you need to set up to where you put more focus on the open cups that happen 5 times throughout the year, the $40,000 tournaments.
I agree.
And you put more focus on maybe even having a longer elite series, because, I mean, you're
with
essentially playing
locks.
You're playing 2 weeks, not even. You're playing like 1 week worth of elite matches, because if you don't make it through the group stage, you're done after playing in 4 total days. So It doesn't really feel like that's super conducive towards elongated, longevity with these teams and these players. And if the whole idea is to try to establish, a storyline or a narrative or some extra spotlight on these players, you need to give them at least a longer chance to be able to do that, I think, first and foremost. And some of that does come with the ability to have good rehearsal with these teams. Now, the counter argument is just form those teams earlier and stick with them while you're losing through things like the qualifiers and the opens. Yeah, I get that. But I still think that there was a lot missed on the attention that could be driven into these more major style events, because it did feel like they were just another piece of the puzzle. Like the difference between cups and opens already was pretty negligible.
For sure,
and then the elite as well, I feel like this kind of got looped into that a little unfortunately. So I think it was a really good first starting point when it comes to trying to establish a second tier, but I think they need to really go make it clear cut. Like if you're in that second tier with the elite, that's where you're going to be for the next 5 weeks, and everyone knows where they can find you. Otherwise, if you're not in that, then you still have some open cups to kind of go through and things like that. But it did feel like the spotlight, even though it was there, it wasn't really targeted or focused enough, I think, just on what was provided throughout the year.
Yeah, I agree. Sam,
do you think we'll get lands back?
I mean, you would have to think so. If
in
all of the
sense.
format
And
of
do you
the
think
CDL
that fixes it?
I think it could, depending on how they structure the event, right? Like, let's just figure next year we have the same format in the CDL that we did this year. 5 majors with a finals. So you're looking at 6 different events that could possibly happen that allows team passes to be sold.
Yep.
And you essentially still have these open tournaments that happen. In my mind, I think what you need to do is have those opens start Thursday and Friday through an open bracket. And then your elite teams, maybe the top 4 only of the 8 from North America, from Europe, and then hopefully from APAC as well as Japan and Latin America, they make up kind of a group system. And then you qualify through Thursday and Friday in the open bracket to get placed into groups with those elite teams. And then you play out a double elimination style bracket after the group. So you have groups on Saturday and then a double elimination on Sunday or something like that. It's kind of essentially just take what happened for postseason where you had an open LCQ, save a couple of teams that already made it because they were auto-qualified. Those teams qualified into a group stage, into a double elimination style bracket. Take that format, put it on every single major, make it more exclusive for finals. Good. Bang.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I mean, like, obviously the big problem in the first year at the beginning was like the amount of lands was outrageous, and you had like
it's too much.
30, 40 teams only at some of those lands, which was a big time problem. And there's not enough teams willing to make the trip out to like Atlanta or wherever it was to actually play. So I agree with you, having like about those 5 major on land, like those land tournaments for challengers would make a lot of sense, I think, and definitely be a cool way to go. Obviously it's inevitable. With challengers, you're going to have a lot of online qualifier stuff still, which is unfortunate, but there's really no way around it unless we, just in the current state of what's going on with the CDL right now.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree with that. I mean, do you feel like it was enough for the teams like this year? Like, how would you limit how much they play when it comes to like cups and 2Ks and things like that? Because obviously it's kind of hard to like minimize unless you like really just limit it from the beginning with how many of them there are off the rip.
It's a tough battle to have, because there's a part of me that wants to say the opens are for everybody, right? Overall, you got it's a major, it's a $40,000 tournament, so on and so forth. Part of me wants to say the cups should be not including the elite teams. The elite teams should not be able to play in the cups. Now, the problem with that is that the players would argue you're giving us less money to play for, which I agree, that's a problem. But I think if you'd make the cups less important overall, it kind of solves that issue in a way to where players don't have to feel that they have to play every single weekend. And the other, I think, solution would be just have the cups once every other week instead of having them once a week. That kind of already solves some of the problems.
And that could also help with rosters sticking together a little bit longer too, and things like that.
Yeah, I think so. So I don't know. There are a number of different ways that you can have the conversation. But in my mind, if I were looking at this from an overarching competitive standpoint, you need to try to use those as different steps to the ladder. Like the cups should be the least important thing in the system. They are the first step of qualifying and being a challengers team. Then you have these major open tournaments where the weight obviously becomes a little bit heavier. Then you have elite qualifiers, and then you have the elite itself. That kind of at least sets up some sort of a tier system to kind of give you a way to really identify with what's happening in that open amateur nature.
And that's very comparable to the CWL back in the day with 2Ks. Then you play in the open and LAN tournaments, to then playing in like champs qualifiers or last chance qualifiers for champs and things like that. So that would make a lot of sense too in that regard.
One thing I was going to like talk about is like, do you think they did a good job of strategically timing the opens? Like, do you think there's a best time for these major opens to be with like the CDL, like the Pro League? Like, you think like they should take place at the same time or like
on the bye weeks?
Yeah,
it definitely should be on the bye weeks. The problem with it is, again, just you have to look from the top down. And so if you're saying that your elite league is going to run in the first 3 weeks of the CDL format, then the qualifier has to be on the off week. So it's difficult, I think, overall to make that happen. But I will say, like, you know, going through, like, it was me, Visions, and Brody, like, we commentated every single one of those opens and nobody watched. As soon as the CDL started, nobody was watching. So it's really difficult on us, I think, as commentators, and I think just from a production at whole, is like, how do we sell a story about a player that we think should be picked up when no one has a chance to watch them because everyone's watching the CDL major, as you would rightfully expect them to do. It's difficult because moving into a weekday is really not an option because it's a long and very large double elimination style bracket. So then you start talking about, like, do we just broadcast it on Sunday and then rebroadcast it that night? Well, then everyone already knows the results, so nobody watches, which is what we see with APAC every single time that APAC comes live. So it's a really difficult situation. I had the opinion that if we're going to do a broadcast that is not just the Elite League, let's make it the Elite Qualifiers instead of the Opens, which you would think helps make it, you know, the narrative more conducive with the elite overall. It's like, hey, now we're watching this team qualify and then you're watching them play. But then the argument is, why are we playing for $40,000 nobody can watch? It's a double-edged sword no matter which way you want to take it. So it's tough. It's very tough.
I would definitely lean the elite qualifier route because it just helps build the storyline for what hopefully is the biggest deal in Challengers, which is the elite, which hopefully incentivizes, you know, keeping teams and staying together and playing those league matches as a squad and like building the storylines for those pros that are in the elite or in the elite series. So I'm with you on that part. It's always a little bit weird because it's like, I mean, yeah, they are $40,000 tournaments. That does catch some headlines versus like an elite league match or whatever it is, you know? So like I can kind of see like where you'd rather stream like a, you know, a $40,000 tournament final versus an elite series qualifier. But at the same time, if you're trying to build that narrative throughout the year and build these faces of amateur COD, the next stars of Call of Duty, then like you kind of need to help follow those storylines of their path through Challengers into the Elite Series and then put the most of the money there instead.
One thing that would really help, and this already happens with Overwatch contenders, so I would love to see this for Call of Duty Challengers, is regionalized broadcasts. You know, have APAC happen live. Have them watch the winners, losers, and grand finals live. Have EU start at 6 o'clock in the morning Eastern time so they can follow along with winners semifinals, winners finals, losers finals, grand finals. Then North America would just happen a little bit later. Like, you know, we got to the point where a couple of the majors, the ones that ended really, really quickly, where we were still in like losers finals of North America when CDL was over. So like that scheduling could still very much so work out. Even if you put a little bit of a delay on when North America starts and have them play later, you could still avoid that kind of blackout window of everyone's watching the CDL.
That's true.
You might miss some of the EU Grand Finals. You might miss some of the early stuff with North America.
Right. It might be a little late of a night, but hey, you know.
Yeah. I think that's probably the best overall move though, if there were to be. And then beyond that, you know, why was the COD League YouTube not rating the Challengers YouTube when it was still live? You know, it wasn't until finals that they started doing a co-stream of it.
Right.
So, you know, great that they figured it out. We just have to hope that will be a part of the integral broadcast going into next year, pending, of course, the format doesn't change.
Right. And of course, you know, what we need to see, obviously, is having you doing like intermediate segments during the CDL or during the CDL broadcast, talking about challengers, talking about these players, interviewing Parasite, interviewing Mohawk, interviewing, you know, Pentagram and all of these dudes during like break times for the CDL, instead of watching a countdown for 2 minutes, I'm watching you or anyone interview, obviously you, but anyone who's involved with the CDL scene or the Challenger scene, interviewing these players and getting these guys in front of the CDL audience, and then cross promoting these matches, and like, yo, after this stream ends, we're starting the grand finals of this cup or this qualifier or whatever it is. Like, let's get in here and watch that afterwards. Like, there's kind of this cross pollination.
I have to imagine that there is something to be said about the CDL broadcast wanting to be the CDL broadcast, so it stays within that box. Now, I think again, for all of us as Call of Duty enthusiasts, we would love to know that extra bit of information. And honestly speaking, like, content incorporation is something that I really wanted to try to pursue this year, including some conversations with the people who ran the broadcast production.
Yeah.
And a lot of it just felt like, the approvals to go through all of that was, was too late in the idea process. Yeah. There's a lot that would have to go through. And again, I think it all starts with the fact that the CDL is the CDL. It isn't really supposed to be put on the same podium even as Challengers in a way. I mean, yes, obviously that should be, because it is still a farm system, kind of like the minor leagues are for Major League Baseball.
Are you trying to say like Activision sees it like the NFL and college football, where like during halftime you're not talking about the college football games on Saturday?
I think that's a pretty good comparison. I won't begin to speculate on as far as what Activision thinks or looks at it, but I think that's the best way of putting it. Like, if you're watching if you're watching Major League Baseball and it happens to be, the Yankees versus the Red Sox, you're not going to have somebody from the Red Sox organization saying, hey, by the way, our AAA team is also playing right now. So, that stuff I think is, you're looking to put it. But I think, again, for all of us as COD enthusiasts,
man.
It would be nice to see that incorporation.
Because we have pros who were pros literally last season playing, and like half the freaking teams have, it's like half the teams have guys who were pros last year playing. That's not the case in AAA, like where you have literal superstars playing inside in AAA on a consistent basis, or like you don't have the NFL players going back down to college football to play on the weekends. Like, that is just not, it's just, I feel like so different. And like, if they're seeing it like that, in my opinion, they're missing a huge opportunity to cross-pollinate superstars and create these storylines on a week in and week out basis for competitive COD.
I feel like one thing that could have happened too is like, we have like, we have an org like Toronto Ultra, they pick up Insight, but I would have loved to see what Insight was like in Challengers. And like, even though like, we know like the
after the pros type segments,
Challengers, but like, at least if we could have some sort of like, he could provide context of like, we could see how he played in the last cup he played in. We can see even like clips of that, and you can almost follow the story of him. So like, oh, there are other players out there that might get picked up and have stories that are interesting. So then you want to find them before another team does.
I agree. Like if you had a segment like, during, for Insight a few times throughout the year, he's talking about like his path to go pro, and then he's gassing up some of the guys he played with, like, yo, this dude, I mean, I'm nasty, but I'm nasty, but like this guy also nasty and deserves a spot too and a chance. Like suddenly that shout out now kind of creates natural interest, and like, okay, I want to go watch this guy. I want to go watch Bids or whoever it is play, because Insight nasty play, because Insight said he's literally nasty. Like this dude's crazy. And so I think those types of conversations would help cross pollinate the CDL so well. And like, it's just such a missed opportunity if you don't. Like, I just think it's like devastating that we're not doing those types of segments on CDL broadcasts consistently, and having guys who watch the Challengers on a day-to-day basis, day in and day out, casting it, talking about it, coaching it, and then not having them on the CDL broadcast once in a while to talk about it is just definitely a huge missed opportunity.
Things we can hope for next year, right? I really do believe that, for Elite this year, that was like okay, this is brand new to anything ever Call of Duty. Let's make sure that runs without a hitch, and then we can start to figure out maybe exactly how that product would be promotable or even digestible to the audience at large, because it did feel like for a lot of it was, hey, we need to just make sure this league gets done and gets done successfully, which I think at the end of the year they can say it did. So hopefully that's something that they can expand upon going into next year.
Yeah. And just like, we used to be like in a really bad spot with Challengers. Like we were like way ahead of where we were before.
Agreed.
So like, honestly, we're in a better spot than we were last year with it. And hopefully that just keeps growing.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I mean, at least we want to talk a little bit about some of the players that you thought like have a legit chance to get picked up here in Rostermania, or guys to at least watch heading into next year, regardless if they're a pro or not. But guys who could have a ton of success even in challengers, even if they don't end up getting picked up. So we'd like to hear your opinion on some of the guys that kind of come to mind, NA, EU, anywhere in between, about your thoughts about some guys that come to mind. You're like, man, this guy really, at least at this point, man, deserves a shot, or anything along those lines.
Now, this question's going to be pretty easy to answer because we did get a lot of up and then down and then up again and then down again.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think we got it not just a look at, because, you know, last year we had this conversation. It was, this guy was great in challengers, but would he be good in the league? Now we actually have some reference to, would they be good and were they any good in the league? And I think that conversation starts with DiamondCon. He was put by far in the worst possible position considering all of the timings that had happened. Like, beginning of the year, DiamondCon, after week 2, I was like, dude, he is 100% going to be rookie of the year material if he keeps playing like this. Yeah. And to be fair, he played like that all year long, but New York fell into the problem of, we have too many good players. What do? Yeah. DiamondCon has to go back down. He goes down. New York Subliners Academy start to win everything. You know, that's great news overall. And then all of a sudden, Clay goes on his mental break. DiamondCon gets pulled up. DiamondCon misses out on a chance to play at amateur finals. Like, he doesn't get a chance to play challengers finals at all.
Oh, man.
If he's not number 1 on people's list as far as AR flex opportunity going into next year, something is extremely wrong, because he was impressive every step of the way, no matter what venue he found himself playing in this year. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree. It just comes down to, like, you know, which pro is going to be like, yo, I vouch, who's going to vouch for him and then pull him on that squad. And, like, it's kind of hard to sort out that possibility for him right now in Rostermania, which would be mind blowing if that's the case. I mean, I think worst case scenario, it seems at least pretty likely that like, you know, the Paris spot or the Chicago spot with what Krim was talking about could end up pulling the trigger on him at the end of the year, worst case scenario. But there is just so many like weird options for him now heading into Rostermania. I'd imagine it's gonna be pretty stressful for him.
Yeah, there's definitely no easy way of looking at any of the players that we can talk about today and say like, oh, like they're going to immediately fit into any CDL roster because they've been sitting in challengers throughout the whole year, or they were a part of a CDL team and things didn't work out, or for one reason or the other. You know, you look at players like Parasite as well, who I still think overall over the last 2 years has proved himself that he very well, maybe, if not undeniably, is the best North American challengers player out there. You know, he finished, what, 3rd last year with 5-star, and he came out this year and only finished 8th, sure, but they had a tough bracket, and tough run. And that was another team that they put together like 2 weeks before finals.
And like from an org perspective, he's a guy that you could bring on and help you in that conversation of which guys am I looking for, and he knows every single player in the amateur scene very well. So like his opinion is beyond trustworthy when it comes to which guys are talented and which guys would be good to add to his squad and which guys might fit, and the personalities of all of these guys in the scene. I think Parasite would make a ton of sense to bring on as a guy, as a foundational piece for one of these teams who's looking to build the cheap squad. I mean, like, if they really want to go that route, Paris on Parasite just makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, like, it's beautiful. It really is. No, but I love that one too.
Yeah, I think that, you know, if you're looking for front runners for different reasons, I think those are the top 2 for me in North America. I mean, there are a number of players that you can shout out. I thought Slacked played really well at the end of the year. Yeah. Pentagram was consistent from start to finish and boasted arguably, and I think he actually was like the top #1 average event placer this year. Now, granted, he did play with Built by Gamers throughout a lot of the year, but at the beginning of the year, he was great with higher. Save checkmate a couple of different times, but he really, I would say, as an OBJ SMG, Pentagram definitely deserves a lot more credit than what he has gotten. And there's so many people, like I've got a long list that I could be going on and on about, but we don't have 4 hours.
Maybe we do though.
I'll say this about EU, and it's just so unfortunate that all of this hangs over his head, but like Vortex is one of the most unbelievable talents that I've ever seen play Call of Duty. Like, not just in challengers, like just going back, and I didn't really know a lot about Vortex last year, so I went back and like watched over some of the World War II stuff. It's like, it's just really unfortunate that like all of those placings and things that kind of came with it kind of diluted his value, because he has been untouchable in Europe the last 2 years.
I mean, even dating back to BO4, we had a lot of success too. It's crazy. I think he definitely deserves a chance. It's just so, I mean, the European guys got beyond screwed this year with the lack of lands and the lack of opportunities, and then not being able to cross play with the NA side of things. And then you have the NA biases already. Like the amount of just tough situations that the EU scene has got put into. I mean, good news for them. I mean, you know, Toronto has done wonders for that, for like to at least like tell orgs like, okay, maybe we should look at the EU guys a little bit more because they're frying everyone in the CDL right now. But no, I love that pick as well.
Yeah, it's just really tough for the EU population at large because unless you find a way to talk to London in this offseason, your only other hope is, like you mentioned, Toronto. But if you're really rooting that Nubsy gets picked up by an org somewhere, because he's the only other coach that's out there that's going to fight for an EU talent. You've even heard him talk a lot about Pred, who I would say is probably the #1 prospect coming out of APAC. You know, it's so tough because we've seen now over the last 2 years, the top 4 teams in Europe, I mean, they very well could be the top 4 teams in Challengers, period. Like, they are so unbelievably talented and coordinated with one another. And that's the whole kind of problem in its own sense is like, if you're looking to be successful bringing in EU talent, do you have to bring 2 or 3 or all 4 of them to mesh? I don't know. I'm not a part of that conversation as far as the player chemistry goes, but we saw that kind of be a product of what's happened with Toronto. So, I mean, that singularity bond is really definitely owned up for in some ways.
Yeah, it is. I mean, my goodness, they're disgusting. I mean, that's fair. No,
I think if you're London, you're looking at Afro saying, brother, who have you played with that you want to continue to play with? And that's probably your only other hope here for European talent going into next year.
Right. I mean, it's looking like Nasty has a good chance.
Nasty.
And then Harry, Gizmo, those types of guys have a pretty dang good chance. And they're definitely deserving. That's the thing is like, you can make an argument for so many of the Challengers players to be deserving because they've won. There's a lot of guys who have won a lot in the last few years, and we've had so few guys who have had that chance so far. It's just so unfortunate, you know, without having the lands to prove it and like really make the definitive answers for who deserves to be there. And then you can play the arguments of all these different guys who, depending on who they play with, and it just gets tough in itself when it comes to like the quote unquote friendship league and just getting in, convincing COD pros that you're good enough to play. Like, not to mention COD pros haven't been willing to play 8s anyway lately, so it's like it's all chalked. It's all chalked for them, man. I would be so frustrated.
I would say this much: like you think about who Afro has played with, like the conversation for Harry and Vortex comes around because they played together last year in Modern Warfare. Gizmo as well is an up-and-coming player in Europe that I would say arguably did not have as good of a year as he did throughout this year as he did last year, but he still finished on Atlas Lions in first place. So I think there are still a number of players that are out there that at least have that relationship with Afro to where you can at least feel a little bit more hopeful about your chances. Because we know that for a fact that London's going to keep going off their London path of wanting to play with British players. So there at least is some hope there, I think, if you're any of those TAL guys that finished first this year and also finished first last year with Harry and Vortex a part of that conversation, as well as Nasty, obviously.
That gets tough. I know that's the thing. It's like, which is at the end of the day, like, you know, and this is always the problem is like, you know, when you're like talking about these guys, you can have a list of like literally 30, 40 guys to make an argument for like,
oh, for sure.
The guys that are fringe CDL guys plus the top amateur players. For like, if you built this guy or this guy and brought in this amateur player and this SMG and this flex and this AR, you can maybe build a competitive roster and like you can build all these arguments, but it's you literally just can't prove it because we haven't had LAN with Challengers in 2 years now. So it's just so frustrating. Are there any other thoughts there? Any other guys you might want to give a shout out to? Any other teams that you wanted to give a shout out to? Is there a world where a full squad gets picked up by like a Paris, like a BBG gets just picked up? You know, by
I would love
Paris
to see that
or something like that.
I was gonna say that BBG team. It would be really funny to see the whole hierarchy of or the counter story of Kismet back on Paris. There is something to be desired about that.
I would love it. That would be so funny.
I would say that, I think you hit the nail on the head. That BBG roster, I think first and foremost would be the go-to if you were to look at a full 4-man squad. But then I think the other one is the Atlas Lions team. I don't want to take anything away from, you know, Elevate and Los Pepes and Mavericks and those guys and the actual team more. But I guess that would be the other thing. Like if Paris does sell to Spain, Hola, Timor, vamos. They're probably the 4 that get picked up.
Yeah, no, that would be
so that would be a nice payday for all the Timor management out there, I imagine. But
for sure.
I would say that those are your best bets. BBG first and foremost. Big shout outs to like Mohawk, Saints, Spart, and those guys that
that's the thing too.
They came through and looked really, really good.
We're trying now.
We're trying now, guys. We're unbelievable. But you look at that roster overall and you wonder, would they be picked up in pieces? Hard to say. Right. I think all 4 of them are talented enough. I think Mohawk really showed that at the end of the year. His end of the year was
he played
nuts.
Insane. It was nuts. God. So I mean, and that's so what we saw. I'm sure teams, you're going to be biased when you're thinking back on Modern Warfare and seeing like the flashes that Standy had in some of those big matches. And you're like, man, we didn't see that then and we didn't pick him up. And like, I could see some teams having the FOMO of like missing out on Standy or on Insight with when they were tearing it up inside the amateur scene. Sure. And then maybe just trying to pull the trigger. And maybe we see more substitutes this year of more amateur guys. And like maybe you see teams go like 7 deep instead of just, or like 6 deep instead of 5 deep.
As a security blanket almost,
security
if anything
blanket
else.
Earlier on. And maybe you see a few more academy teams. Like that could be nice at least to kind of give those guys at least some sort of pay and a baseline for living while playing COD would be cool. And that's what I'm hoping to see. I'm hoping to see at least a few more academy teams at least next year would be at least what I'm hoping to see. So
again, it's one of those things that with the conversation of extra substitutes and academy roster, somebody in a boardroom with these ownerships are saying, that's more money that I don't have to spend. Why would I do that?
That's the problem.
That's the problem point.
I mean, Toronto's not regretting every dollar they spent on their 8 players last year because that meant they got Kleenex.
Wasn't it 10? Wait,
or 10 players in Modern Warfare. They had Kleenex in that roster and then they ended up picking up Insight. Like, they are not regretting that. So
no,
maybe we can see more of that in the future too. I would love to, but we'll have to see, I guess. So, well, with that said, I do want to talk some Rostermania here and theorize now with some of the names that we threw out there and the things that we know so far and talk some Rostermania. So without further ado, let's talk the craziness that is Rostermania. Let's get into it.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Alrighty, Rostermania time, baby. So obviously we're in the midst of it, and by the time this podcast comes out, who knows what could happen? I mean, we could have two new teams in the CDL. All the rosters could be announced. Who knows? Obviously, on Sunday is the official day when players can start signing. So more than likely, there's not going to be any game-breaking announcements until then, but you never know with where we're at with Rostermania right now. So those are all the things to potentially consider while we're at this. So for those of you who are, maybe just joining us with the Rostermania stuff, this is kind of where I've been at with Rostermania on the year. I got to get this pulled up real quick. This is where I'm at with Rostermania on the year. So this is, we just got the Photoshop file up right now. Right now, it seems like, we got imagining FaZe is all locked up. We're imagining at this point, the Ultra is still in a pretty good spot, but
also a lock.
The interesting thing is Zuma has confirmed twice now that he's been hearing Kleenex's name thrown around in conversations and that it's possible Kleenex tries to get a bag. So the only potential that we could see with something crazy happening in Rostermania is if Kleenex strikes a deal in some sort of situation there, because it would make sense that he got signed in Modern Warfare and then he had the Cold War years. So the contracts could be up for him. And then suddenly we see Kleenex leaving. That could be the only other option.
Here's the thing. Doesn't Ultra have money though?
I mean, there's Splice. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not as much cash as others.
Maybe not as much
money, but
yeah.
Right. Yeah. And one thing that Zuma, at least in tonight, mentioned, like after he talked about Kleenex, he talked like, well, some players, feel like some players, like it was just within like 2 minutes of him mentioning Kleenex. He was like, some players feel like they don't get enough money from their prize pools. And that was something, and like he was like, some players only get 50% of their prize pool money, and while some get like 100. And I'm like, well, that's interesting that he mentioned that like 5 minutes after talking about Kleenex, because we had heard that Toronto's terrible with that type of stuff. So that's at least a thought that came to mind when I was listening to it. Like, interesting if that could be the potential case there. So,
and there was that Bance tweet, which
and then
but that had
wait, what was this? I missed this.
Yeah. So then there was the Bance tweet today that there was basically like
So word for word, people get a little bit of juice and forget who they were drinking water with.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
and
Yes.
then Kleenex replied, "Is that how we're going to do it?"
Yeah. So either
Wait,
it's major bait, or something went down today. So
Yeah.
that is something to keep your eyes on with Kleenex, and that would match up with what Zuma was saying, at least.
Yeah.
But that did
Who
happen
knows?
before, and so they were kind of talking about that.
What offers could he get from somewhere else that'd be worth it?
It would have to be like an LAG. Like it would
LAG
have to be
or
LAG or
Subliners.
Seattle.
LAG's building a God Squad. I mean, maybe Subliners, maybe Florida, maybe LAT.
Holy.
I don't know.
My
but
mind is melting right now.
I don't
with that
think he'll leave.
consideration.
I don't think he'll leave.
Yeah, I
think
agree.
Ultra, honestly, based off like their reputation, I honestly think they probably take care of their players pretty well. I don't know about financially, but it seems like as a culture, at least they had like a little party and things like that. We don't see every org do that.
I mean, they were
I don't know,
right there. Like,
Did you see their trophy picture today? They didn't look all that happy to be there.
Oh, well, there you go. See?
Now we're really
I know.
getting into the detective
for
mode.
sure. It just, yeah, because it sucks because like they were right there. Like, you're talking about like this whole Rostermania, everyone's trying to beat FaZe. Like that's the goal. They're trying to beat FaZe. And they were right there. And it sucks.
And they did beat FaZe. They were the only
And
team
yeah,
that actually
they did.
really do it besides Seattle.
So it's like, it's one of those things where, obviously if he gets a bag, good for him, but it would be awesome to see this team go at it one more year because the potential's there for all four of these guys.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So
Because Zuma, so I was trying to chase down exactly what he said. So yeah, Zuma said he heard Kleenex is shopping was what he said. And then he said about Bance's tweet, I don't think it's bait. And then he was like, because of contract issues. But then Crimsix said twice that he's like, nah, that's bait. That's bait. So Crimsix thought it was bait. Zuma didn't. And so I guess that's kind of where you have to decide whether or not. And then that was when he mentioned the 50-50 splits. And Zuma kind of doubled down on that after they talked about him saying it's not bait. So I don't know. It's at least possible that Kleenex still leaves. And so when you guys are looking at these rosters, I mean, obviously we still have the OpTic Dallas squad, which feels almost like a lock at this point that that's going to happen, which is still mind-blowing to me.
it's still
And
mind blowing.
We have yet to actually talk about this squad specifically. So let's spend a little second talking about this squad. So obviously Scump, Dashy, Illy, Shotzzy. Thoughts?
Does anyone
I
else
think
think
that'll
this
be it.
roster is not going to work?
See,
I don't.
that's what thought
I have my
too.
issues with it.
Yeah. It
Fire away.
the Illy Dashy AR duo is
Thank you.
is the weird thing here. Like where do you see that like working honestly? Because to me, I don't know. And again, this could be, just kind of overthinking it. I don't know, but like the way Dashy plays, it seems like you need more of an AR who's like willing to do the dirty work. And I'm not sure. Dashy obviously gets kills. Like there's no question about it.
Well, he's a beast at doing that.
Exactly. So like,
Very
and
good
maybe
at
that's
that.
all you need. But to me, it seems like you need more of that like solid AR like role. And I don't see Illy or Dashy doing that. I don't know. I'm not sure if you guys think the same way or not.
I
but
mean, my first red flag would be the in-game communication. Who's really going to step up and make those calls? Because I mean,
It'd have to
Scump's
be Scump.
normally has never really been that guy in his career, though. It's usually been FormaL or Crim or Karma or someone on one of those rosters doing it. Whether it was Crim in BO4 or last year with FormaL or this year with FormaL or R-City's last year. So Scump's never really been that guy, and Dashy's definitely not that guy. So then you have to talk about Shotzzy. I don't think Shotzi's that guy. So then it comes down to Illy or Scump.
Illy's definitely not that guy.
Right. So I mean, maybe
Like
in
that,
S&D, Illy can make those play calls, but in Respawn and like really having that big picture perspective, I don't know if that's the best case. So, I mean, S&D feels like this team is locked and loaded to be at least very competitive and very good in S&D. I mean, when has Dashy, Scump, or Illy been ever bad in their careers in S&D? And then you have Shotzzy, who's going to be a demon. He's only gotten better and better in S&D throughout his career. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and we saw the best Shotzzy S&D, some of the best S&D we saw from anybody last year in the last maybe two stages from Shotzzy specifically. So, I don't know. At least in S&D, this team's locked. The question would be in Hardpoint exactly
Respawn, for
how
sure.
it plays out. I mean, again, we saw Scump in the second half of last year look really, really good in Respawn, but like especially Scump and Illy, I mean, they had their own struggles in Respawn throughout the beginning half of the year. And so that's kind of where I have my questions with the team paired with the in-game communication, what that would look like with the dynamics of that team specifically. But
Yeah, I
Dashy and
think
Illy are good friends.
Yeah, the conversation of who would run like the main AR between Dashy and Illy, I think, is where the conversation starts. But it continues with like, how good is the commitment going to be with Scump to play at the same level as Shotzzy? Because that's one of the things that we saw with Envoy at the beginning of the year. Like, they had a little bit of a trouble kind of locking things up. Even though they were very good at respawn, there were definitely moments where it was like, okay, Envoy just won that rotation for them. You know, I would be really interested, I think, just to see.
And as other teams got more fundamental, they got worse, you know, because the other teams got a little bit more fundamental with it. I agree. I mean, maybe having a little bit more built out coaching staff can help with some of those small fundamental things that'll help them keep track of it game in and game out as the year goes along. And maybe that could help if OpTic, Dallas, and Envy ends up building out that coaching staff a little bit for them.
Sure.
But I agree, there are some hesitations for me. Like, when you look at that team, how does it stack compared to a Toronto, a Rocker, or a FaZe, let alone the other squads that we might build?
Yeah. I think it also depends on like the maps as well. Like, it might not be super important when like anchoring.
That's true.
You know, it very well, the maps could be very, very, very dicey and kind of just mixy all around. So I don't know. A lot of things, but that was my initial thought.
This team also gives them a better chance of doing, like, I mean, with the roster they had before, with having Dashy and FormaL, you didn't have the confidence in a team where there was a 3 SMG meta. I mean, you don't have the confidence in seeing Dashy run a full-time SMG if it ends up being a 3 SMG meta at some point for a game. So this team's way better suited for a 3 SMG meta if that ends up being the case, or a flex role with more SMGs involved. So I don't know. Any other thoughts with how they stack up against those other teams?
I think it's going to be just like a kind of, are they gonna be able to play like good fundamental COD when they're playing against a FaZe or an Ultra? And like you said, the in-game communication, I think something is off about it.
Okay.
But you know, only time will tell.
In your head, are they a top 3, top 4? Where do they kind of sit right now? If you had to think going into next year, I know we only have 1/3 of the rosters even like loaded in here, but like, where are they at in your head potentially?
Thing. It's very reminiscent, at least to me, kind of like what that old like OpTic Dynasty was. Where, like, they just picked up like the 4 best players, and like
4 nasty players.
And kind of the talk was like they kind of survive off. They're all just really, really talented, but they're not exactly like meshing together how they're supposed to. And that's like why I think that old OpTic Dynasty wasn't. I mean, I hesitate
as consistent
to say this,
as they wanted to be.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Not as like consistent as maybe you want them to be. And
where
I feel
they would
like
drop
this is the
games
same
on Friday
squad.
randomly. Like, that was very consistent. That was consistent. That they would drop random Friday matches, and we even saw that at Champs with OpTic.
Yeah, and I feel like we're kind of seeing the same thing again. Like, it's a star-studded roster, but it's not the right pieces.
Interesting. Okay.
I had the same reaction to this Dallas roster as Visions and I did about the initial Minnesota roster.
Interesting.
If this roster is indeed what it's going to be, they're either going to be top 4 or bottom 4.
Yeah.
Ooh.
There is really no in between. They're either going to be electric and really, really good, or this is just not going to work at all.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the Dallas team, you know, I mean, like Empire for a little while there was like outside the top 6. I mean, like in most power rankings, it was like for a minute there, they were really struggling. And then that's when they made the Huge change. So then but like on paper, Huge, Shotzzy, Illy, and Krim should be absolutely disgusting. So, you know, like that, they ended up having to make a change. So I could see some sort of weird situation like that if the chemistry falls apart for the team. But for now, I think they're a locked and loaded top 4 team. I'm still really excited about this team.
Yeah, they could be really, really good. Well, if the game favors mixy ARs with good kind of mindset SMG play, this team could be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like if the ARs can just afford to get really active, this team could be really, really good.
And then
because I'm not gonna lie, like, yeah, I mean, like, Illy in the last 2 years has not really ever been able to find himself in a spot where he can run that middle weapon, right? Like, that's where he was great in BO4 was running with Maddox. Same thing with Dashy. You have to force an M4 into their hands or a Krieg 6 in their hands. They don't get to the level that like they should be, I think, in my mind. Like, ceiling wise, they're only on like the 8th floor. They still have so many floors to go before they hit their max potential. I think it just depends on the game.
With like they don't have the stereotypical main AR on that squad, right? You know? Yeah. So I feel that for sure. So, all right, talking Rostermania. If we can kind of agree that for now, at least, these 4 rosters are going to stay together, the Toronto to Clinics thing is at least an X factor, no pun intended. So when it comes to the other rosters with potentially New York, with Florida, with LA Thieves, right now I've got Envoy on LA Thieves. How do you feel about that happening? What are your guys' prospects? Do you feel like Octane's a lock at that point? Where are you at with the LA Thieves roster?
I think Envoy to LA Thieves makes a lot of sense to me.
Same.
I think it makes a lot. I think just because even the relationship that, Hex, LA Thieves has, Envoy being the type of player he is, and the personality, I just feel like it totally makes sense for him to go to LA Thieves. And now we have the Zuma DM type stuff, and Zuma's DMing Envoy's mom or whatever.
Yeah, so that was the other. Spicy. Yeah. So that was the other thing on the flank, or yesterday I think it was, where Zuma accidentally showed his Twitter DMs, and he had Envoy's mom in his DMs, and chat was like, "Whoa, what's happening there?" And he was like, "Yo, chill. I was just talking to her about Astro order." But what he didn't realize was that.
Why is he taking Envoy's mom's Astro's order? That it just is so weird.
Well, it's because apparently for whatever reason, Zuma's still connected with Astro, unlike the CDL, and Envoy needed new Astros. But what he didn't realize is that his other DM with Astro was still showing up there, and it said, so you want an order of the all with an R, all R, and then it cut off because of the end of with the just showing the preview of the DM, but the all red headset, it's looking like LA Thieves makes a lot of sense for Zuma, or for Envoy. But obviously, there could still be a world where you can end up on Florida or New York. What about would you rather have Vivid or Envoy on the LA Thieves roster?
Envoy.
So
okay, we all agree there. I think I'm in the same boat for sure. I think that team. Okay, then how do you feel about if that ends up being the LA Thieves team? How do you feel about that squad versus what we got so far on the left?
I think read the LA Thieves team.
Yeah, so Envoy, Octane, Draza, and Kenny for you listeners. Yeah, sorry, audio listeners, by the way. Yeah. Should have been probably talking about that.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah.
Rip the dream.
Yeah, sorry, audio listeners. My bad, boys.
On YouTube.
But thoughts? Definitely subscribe on YouTube for sure. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on that roster?
So do you think Hook is for sure gone?
I mean, so. That would be would you guys rather have Envoy than Hook as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would too.
Yeah.
What about with Hugh that group? Envoy? I think so. Yeah.
What was saying? He's trying to get Draza off the team.
He's saying drop Draza.
Shouldn't happen, but
no, Draza's nuts. He's the best part of that team. Honestly.
He's great. Yeah.
No, yeah. Draza. Definitely. I think also showed that he should be a pro player heading into this year, and this LA Thieves team makes a lot of sense. So yeah, other thoughts?
I think this team is nasty.
It's a gross team.
It's Kenny on a World War II game again. Get him back to
game again.
Well, okay, yeah, Modern Warfare game again. But if you actually give Kenny the chance to play a true sub, I think throughout the year, or be able to kind of choose between a sub or an AR,
or
is what
flex,
I should say. Yeah, because you have to feel like that conversation would exist between Kenny and Draza, like who wants to do what, and you of course would lean Kenny towards sub, lean Draza towards AR.
Yeah, so, probably.
I think that roster makes a lot of sense, and if they all fit in the game well, I think that team could be unbelievable. You finally give Octane a team he can work with.
I agree.
What? That's weird. It's the first time since Luminosity we could say that.
Yeah, this is a team where I feel like you can sit with this squad for a whole year and you can work this thing out with a coaching staff, figure things out with just this core four. I really like this team a lot.
And then I've had the super hot take that I think if you gave Draza the chance to play all year long, he could have been a contender for MVP. That was a super hot take, but
I think it's a hot take that is not as hot as you think it is. I think that's very accurate.
Baby,
I like that take.
Truly, truly, he made this team the way the team that it was this year with
2 years
the
in a
roster
row.
changes. It's just incredible. So I'm excited for him for a whole year, playing or starting all year long. So
he saved that OGLA team too. You got to remember.
Yeah.
The S&E feels like it could be a little bit weird on this squad. It might take them a minute to figure out how they want to play together as a squad of four and figure out the search and destroy. But inside of Respawn, this team on paper makes a lot of sense. Especially, I feel like in Control, this team would be disgusting. This is a team built to destroy and control.
CTF.
CTF and Vanguard.
True.
And that's also a debate of whether or not we end up getting what, but CTF definitely could be very possible.
Well, how do you think their fundamental COD's going to be, though?
Right. That's good. That's the debate.
For sure.
Good. I would say these guys are four guys who aren't necessarily seen as quote unquote fundamental players, but they're nasty gunnies, and also you trust them to play off of each other, at least like with Kenny and Draza having that connection. We saw them play really, really well off of each other in that second half of the year together. And then I guess it comes down to Octane and how he plays. We haven't seen him play as well off of his teammates, but he's been very good individually. And then Envoy's an X factor, obviously. But I think he kind of got thrown under the bus by OpTic fans a little bit. And like, I know I emphasized personally quite a bit about how he did push some things that were maybe a little bit risky in 4v4 and took some unnecessary risks. But at the same time, there was a lot of matches where they won it because of Envoy.
100%.
And so it's like, there's the good and the bad with Envoy. And I think if you reel it in more over a year and like with another year under his belt with a different squad, I think it could still be very, very good. I mean, which do you like more, this one or OpTic? OpTic Dallas.
I like this one.
This
really?
LA
I like this one
way more.
Yeah.
Holy.
I think I like
feel
OpTic more.
Josh,
to
I
be
feel
honest.
like you're like really high on the OpTic Dallas. I'm pretty low on the OpTic Dallas.
Interesting.
roster,
Okay,
honestly.
I like that. I like the differences.
Yeah.
Go Sam.
Yeah.
Why is that? Do you have
for sure.
any other reasoning there? Yeah, debate
Again,
that together.
The AR duo,
The AR
of
presence on this
Dashy
team?
and Illy just is kind of weird. Whereas LA Thieves, this seems like a more well-rounded roster where you have like players in their positions and like their core positions that are really good. Like you have Octane as AR, who's like really good. You have, potentially Envoy, and then I would assume Draza probably as the duo with. Well, I guess again, like we said, Kenny could play sub, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I just the well-roundedness of the LA Thieves and like
Interesting.
I think you could pair the gunnies of Thieves versus the OpTic and / Dallas roster. I think they're comparable. Like that's just my personal opinion. But
Oh, hot.
I think you're kind of discrediting Illy a little bit. Like, I know he didn't have like the year that we all thought he was going to have, but I still think Illy has a really, really high potential,
high ceiling.
a really high standard. I think he could be MVP material in the future.
he does. But do you think that like
Does
it'll
this team
show
bring
on
it
the
out of him?
squad?
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, could.
like,
I
But
personally
I feel like
think
this LA Thief squad is going to be too, like, almost like too, I don't know, roguish. Like, they're just going to be too wild with it.
I don't know if
Interesting.
Octane will let that happen though.
Yeah,
That's kind of where I'm at. Like you have a for sure lock. Like what you can expect out of these 4 players in my mind for LAT. Whereas for the Dallas roster, I think a lot of it just depends on what the game looks like.
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
fair.
it comes
I mean,
down to
are
that
we
too.
underestimating the Shotzzy Scump potential duo here? I mean,
I don't think so.
Scump has never had a guy like Shotzzy on his team, though.
That's
I mean, this is a
true.
dude who finesses, who plays with the movement, and him and Shotzzy could play really, really well together. I like this duo more than I like the Envoy Scump duo because I think Scump prefers having that guy with him to kind of be side by side and fly together. And like I think Scump, like with Scump and Tej, where Tej was always willing to kind of just go in. And like in that second half of the year, how many times do we see Shotzzy just be like, dude, F it, I'm flying into this hill. And then he ends up popping a 2-piece, and he did that just about as good as anybody in the CDL alongside Abizi. And I think having him plus Scump could be pretty nasty together. And then you have Dashy overlooking the top of him with Illy still flexing and playing, making big time plays too.
It'd
I'm
be a
pretty
hell
high
of a
on the
matchup.
team.
This is
I
the new
also
rivalry,
think-
by the way.
Oh,
I would
it
say.
is.
It's gonna be high.
It is.
But I
It'd be
think
great.
Shotzzy is a really, really good, like, in-game listener. Like,
I agree.
think typically better than like some of these other pros. And I think maybe that's what the problem was with that Scump and Envoy duo, is that Envoy, I think, very much has an idea in his head, and like it's hard for him to shake that, where I think Shotzzy is much more flexible with how he plays the game and in a way more helpful.
Yeah.
And I think Scump can really thrive off of that too.
Yeah, I mean, we just saw
It's a
Scump
good
and
game.
Envoy get too disconnected in search and destroys oftentimes, and that caused for some major problems for them in like 3v4s or in 2v1s or whatever it was, and that would cause problems. So we'll see. As for the other rosters as well, how do you feel about the New York and Florida rosters? Because we have some of the players here in the bottom left corner. So right now we have Clay and Hydra. I think. How do you guys feel about them probably sticking on New York at this point? Feels pretty likely.
It feels
And then
like
I
a
have
chance.
Neptune on Florida, but that I don't know because Zuma was
Halo's
talking
back.
about Zuma was talking. That's what I'm saying. Zuma was talking about Neptune, and he really seemed like Zuma thought Neptune was on the move, and he said it multiple times.
Well, I could see Neptune wanting to move. If he gets an offer, let's say New York sends him an offer, which I
Would
think
they?
is, I think they would. Clay, like, I think it's a perfect thing. Like, Clay wants those
So,
younger people. He has a
this-
Hydra.
Man.
If he gets a Neptune, it's like there's his, like, you know, quote unquote, like
I
second
need to find this
Shotzzy.
tweet.
I don't know. I'm not high on Neptune after this last year, personally.
I mean, I'm kind of with you, but I think he started growing at the very end. And I think started getting better. And I think maybe with a guy like Clay, he could grow into it even more.
I just don't know. Like, is the mental break from Clay just like, is he tired of trying to have to coach everybody through everything? Like, does he want more veterans to be around him now?
That's a good
I mean,
point.
full of speculation.
Oh, more veterans around him. So my thought, this was my theory here.
Not
So
about
Vivid,
him,
Vivid on the 29th, 2 days ago, posted like like I'm like kind of mind blown. Like I can't believe this happened. GIF.
Yeah.
I'm like originally going into Rostermania after he was dropped and how highly Crim spoke of Vivid when they played together. I thought like, okay, I think they're a duo. But then he posted that tweet. And then I'm like, and then you said that like whole like maybe Clay's kind of sick of being the guy just him to coach. And the rumors of Clay wanting to team back up with Dallas. How crazy is it that Crim goes to New York?
There's the thing. I don't know.
That.
I would love it too. I would really love it. Like being like the New York fan that I am. But
Crim was on the flank tonight. I mean, why would you go on the flank unless you're on New York? Coincidence? I don't know, man. That's weird.
No.
So then you get a fourth young guy, which I guess could be Neptune, or maybe you pick up an AM. I don't think they take Vivid.
I could see them taking Vivid.
This was something we talked about, and then the YouTuber named Unscripted tweeted that he's hearing that Crim is going to New York. And what was he saying? So Unscripted, what was he tweeting? I what's his YouTube? I'm missing it here.
Yeah, I think he was saying Crim to New York. And
Zuma read it on the
Neptune,
flank,
right?
but then didn't read it out loud. So he was scrolling over it and then didn't read it out loud.
Dude, Crim, Clay, Hydra, and Vivid would be the tits.
That would be a gross team too. Like Vivid truly did show his potential.
Vivid's nuts, man. He's gross. I mean, he carried LAG in the first year. A little unfortunate, obviously, and then moves to Dallas, fills in, does nicely.
Intel, and it says 1.3K likes now, so it's kind of popping off on Twitter. So Crim 6 is expected to be joining the New York Subliners alongside Clayster and Hydra for the 22 season. If the fourth is expected to be Neptune, which would require a buyout from the Florida Mutineers. This buyout has been agreed to, but as we all know, things can change. Nothing can be official till September 5th. Envoy is another potential fourth, though Neptune is considered to be more likely to be the outcome. Again, nothing's official to September 5th. They're probably just verbal agreements. So
yeah, that's interesting
would
that it's not
be
Vivid.
interesting. And that was like a thought that I had, like when I was talking about it on stream with Neptune potentially being the fourth. I didn't really think about pairing him with Clay, but like literally Neptune being the. But with potentially the idea of like the new Shotzzy guy being the Halo dude with Clay and Crim is how ironic is that? Is it like a match made in heaven? I feel like it might be.
It could be. We'll see how like in fives it worked. We'll see if it works in fours.
I agree.
I hope it does. And I do want Crim on that team.
I don't love Neptune as a part of that conversation.
Would you rather have Hook, ASIM, or Vivid?
Or Mac.
Oh,
Mac's been solid for that
as the
team
SMG.
too.
Why not? He did it in Challengers.
He did it in Modern Warfare.
That in Modern Warfare.
Yeah, that's fair. I know. I mean, like, okay, let's at least like think
He
about.
was nasty with it in Modern Warfare. Wait a second.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Clay is in control, though. Clay is in control of this squad at this point.
Oh, for sure.
So,
you make Clay happy if you're New York.
Yeah. So, like, I think Clay is willing to dump ASIM and Mac, and even though they were both amazing, I mean, I think Clay just based off the little bit of drama happened there. Yeah.
That's true.
And Mac is still part of New York too, right? Like officially, like he didn't announce free agency or anything.
No, so he's technically still there. I think this. So I have this surge roster in the top right corner. I have Paul X, Tej, Mac, and then an amateur player, another player. That feels very possible to me.
Well, you got to keep in mind who's coaching that Seattle team. So you throw Tom Gravity in the conversation. You throw Civ into the conversation.
Maybe someone like that. Pred, anyone like that could be possible.
I don't know. I don't like Neptune. Out of all the players we just mentioned, Neptune's at the bottom of my list, I think.
Oh, really? Out of like all of those guys, plus like ASIM, Hook, Vivid.
What's wrong with Neptune? I mean, I have my issues with Neptune too, but I feel like he can learn. I think with a Crim and Clay duo ship, I feel like he could.
Interesting.
I just don't know why you wouldn't want to pick up a guarantee.
That's true. Like, well,
I feel like the upside is
too,
higher with Neptune.
Out of
Like,
let's all choose our
play.
let's all choose our ideal SMG out of Neptune, Vivid, Hook, Asem, and Mac. Out of those 5, which guy would you rather have on this team?
I mean, I suppose Asem might be up there too because he's already played with Hydra and he's already established that.
And Asem was really good.
And he was solid this year too.
I already know my answer.
Fire away. What's yours?
I'm picking Vivid every day of the week, twice on Sundays.
Okay. I love it. I love it. I mean, I might lean. I would either go Hook or Neptune, I think, but I'd Hook with Crim's impossible at this point, I think. So, although Zuma did say that they talked and Crim confirmed that they're on decent terms now. So, in theory, I guess it's maybe possible, but seems unlikely. And then I don't know. Neptune would be kind of fun though. It's like really high upside play where Vivid, I think, is like. He doesn't have the as high of upside, in my opinion, as Neptune does with what we saw gunplay wise this year.
Yeah,
Neptune would have to change his role though, because I mean he was the Hydra on the team for Florida. You know,
true, but I mean,
for
like
LAG.
I mean, you could say though, I mean, like,
Neptune,
is Abizi the simp and is Simp the Abizi? Like, you could probably just make it happen as long as you're both nasty. Like,
I guess, but Simp and Abizi are different though.
True, I agree with that. So, okay, how about let's just say that this is the team. Just for the sake of the video, and let's try to theorize the other teams here real quick, because we're already getting to a decent point in the podcast. So if this is the case, does Awakening go back with Skies then, and that ends up being the case? So you have Skies and Awakening, and then you choose 2 of these 3 as your SMG duo. So Vivid, Hook, and Asem with this squad with Skies and Awakening. Who would you guys pick?
Asem. I would throw Asem on that squad. Just because Asem is a much better communicator than I think that Mutineer squad was at all. I think Asem can really bring in more life and more spark and passion to that team.
Interesting. I personally, I think would go with Hook and Vivid because we saw both of those guys in their time be incredibly good in S&D on the season. Pair that with Awakening and Skies. I think you could create a nasty SMG pairing, especially at least in Search and Destroy, and be a very good S&D team at the least on a consistent basis on the year.
But would the chemistry be there? Go for it.
No, fire away.
Bring in Kismet, Pentagram.
Ooh.
Send it.
Ooh, really?
Send that team of 4.
Let's go. I like the bold takes. That'd be fun. I mean, it's
because Kismet can come in and bring some vocal leadership. Mm-hmm. You've got Pentagram, who's willing to do it all, and then you've got arguably the best duo AR that's out there.
Yeah,
and that's probably what they need a lot was because Rex, you were saying like throughout the whole year, like Florida, they didn't have like direction, like they're like like there wasn't like a meshing quality about Florida, and so maybe that's what you bring on as Pentagram and Kismet to this duo. I mean that
or
would be
Saints and a Pro Loot. I think would be viable as well.
Yeah, I mean, I could see them going the AM route, but like I feel like if you have those 3 guys there that have been proven in the CDL, I don't know if you pass up on at least 2 of them. I mean, like maybe you find another AM to pair with one of them, but like I don't know. I feel like in either an Asem and a Vivid or a Vivid and a Hook. I think Vivid's a lock on that team. Like
really?
I don't know. I feel like
I still think that if Crim goes to New York, I see Vivid going to New York. So I can't get mentally off that block. But.
Wasn't there rumors that Florida were after either Vivid or Hook throughout this season? Like they were after both of them at different times.
I think so. I think I heard the Vivid thing.
Yeah, and then Hook they were definitely after at one point. So I could see them both ending up there
for sure. I just think that if you're Florida, you're coming off of a okay year.
But a disappointing second half, yeah.
You've got to lock down 2 ARs. If you do lose Neptune, which I think even if you don't lose him, you'd be fine maybe parting ways with him. I think this is a team that is in a prime position to take a chance on bringing up 2 players.
2 players. Yeah. I agree.
That's the only reason why I say that. I was actually surprised that Minnesota, it might not make a move either. I mean, they had a great solid end of the year, but I still think
to create a little bit of a higher upside play, in your opinion, probably
I think so.
With something like that. I could see that. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, I mean, is there any objection to sticking with this for now? And then other thoughts on where would Asem end up in this situation? Could you see him going to Surge and like pairing with Mac, and then you have Tej and
Asem has to end up somewhere. That's like Asem has to end up somewhere.
Yeah,
like something like that. I still think
that Seattle team though. That Seattle team is going to be Am City. That's going to be Paul, Gravity, Sib, maybe Venom. I just knowing Phoenix, he's going to pull up the guys that he's been coaching over the last 3 years.
Guys or any of the EU dudes. I could see them doing like a
that
mixed
initial
team.
Western team very well could just be that Seattle Surge team next year.
That's very possible. I mean,
I don't see Seattle. I mean, if you sell the farm, you're not willing to build around Octane again. In my mind, that says you're willing to start up from the ground all over again.
Yeah, pick up the guys.
So
I mean,
cool
they picked up a dude who knows what he's doing.
And I love that they got a coach to like coming in as like their first like pickup, because it really like sets the stage of like how important a coach
to build
can
the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I could see that. I think any of those are possible. I mean, ASIM not finding a squad though feels almost impossible.
Yeah,
he feels like one of those like, oh, we need to fill someone in last minute type things. Like I feel like he's going to fall into that card again.
But almost exactly what
but
happened in New York.
Though he shouldn't though. He proved
he
himself.
shouldn't. No, he was great.
Man.
He was great. And
I do
him
think
stepping up when Clay was gone is actually so big for his stock in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And like, but I just think when you pairing him with a veteran is like what you need to do. Like pair him with like a one of those slashers or crims or clays, and like to keep him, because we've seen him go rogue once in a while where he just gets disconnected from the rest of his squad and
so true, and
can go a little blind once in a while, and that's kind of his biggest weakness at points, especially in Search and Destroys. But when he's on and he's disgusting. So I guess it's kind of my thought is I feel like he has to get a roster. How do you feel about that LAG squad with like a Pred, Pristini, gunless slasher situation?
Well, if we have an ASIM sitting on the sideline, I think we should throw him in.
Throw him instead of Pred.
I would say probably with like instead of Pristini.
Interesting.
True.
I mean, I feel like if you're going to be LAG and you want to build that team around Slasher, I think Slasher Gunless makes sense. And then from there, it's just kind of a, does Bevels and those guys, do they want to take a chance on bringing Pred in? Obviously, there's a lot of hot topic conversation about that. But I feel like this is still too risky of a move for LAG coming off of 2 very unsuccessful seasons.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I just think this London Royal Raven squad with Afro, and then you have Nasty, Zero, and then Harry, it seems very likely at this point.
Very likely.
And then you have Sib on the bench still. You've got like, all of those guys, Saints, and so many other amateurs, the BBG guys, and Temp, and the Scraps, and Wuskin, and Shawnee, and Alex, and Assault, and Exotic, and Vortex, and like the list goes on and on. John, so many dudes, Diamond Con, and then we have 8 spots remaining. Like it's so crazy how like that fills up so quick. Where would Sib end up in a situation like this? Like
it just depends if Atlanta's willing to is willing to sell him off, right? But I would say the best bet would be Seattle. If he were to be bought out, he would be bought out and he would go to Seattle.
And then you hear.
I think you're looking at Paul and Tom as the 2 ARs for Seattle. I mean, they very well may just pick up somebody a little bit more stapled, but if I were to put a wager on it and like have the big Vegas payout, I would expect that Seattle team to be all former amateur players.
Yeah.
Outside of Paul, obviously, because he played in London. But
and then we'll have to see. I mean, I think a Parasite situation on Paris could very well happen. Like that seems very possible to me. And then who knows what would happen with the 4th org, like the extra org that would come in to take the Chicago spot. I mean, that could literally be anything, and probably will be like, a pickup squad of minimum wage players. Like
unless it's NRG. If NRG comes in and brings themselves back to the table, you get to feel like they're going to do what they can to make moves. The thing about that last spot is they better figure it out soon, because all of the moves that we feel pretty confident about for 7, 8 of the teams, they're probably going to be for sure locks unless somebody really comes in and throws a curveball.
I agree. Yep. And that would probably take Kleenex shifting the dominoes up with leaving and finding a bag somewhere else potentially. So that's what we have to look out for. Obviously, we can sit here all day and theorize, but by the time this comes out, it could already have been completely screwed up and we probably wasted 30 minutes. So who knows? But with that said, I think we can head into intelligent or irrelevant and talk about how dumb the people are. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's get it.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Here we are. Intelligent or irrelevant. Sam, lead the way. What we got for us?
Here we go. We got a great one because
I'm excited.
Whoever writes these is just super, super smart.
He's genius.
Love that guy.
Thank you. Which of these sub-duos would be the most successful in the next Call of Duty?
Okay, I'm excited to hear the options. What are the options, Sam?
Yeah,
so the first option might be the scuffed option here.
Oh, no.
Hook and Envoy. Should probably say Draza and Envoy, honestly, but good as it is.
It's all good.
Number 2, Shotzzy Scump. number 3, Hydra Neptune, and number 4, Afro and Nasty.
Hydra and Neptune. Oh, Afro and Nasty. Oh.
I mean, I bet everybody picks Scump and Shotzzy.
Everybody picks Shotzzy and Scump.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's going to be an 80% Shotzzy
I guarantee you Shotzzy and Scump, but my vote would be Afro Nasty.
Me too, Sam. Let's fucking go.
Here? No.
God, did we just become best friends?
I think so.
You want to go do karate in the garage?
Obviously,
Yes,
my
good.
pick is obviously Shotzzy and Scump. But
Oh.
I mean, a Neptune.
Sell out.
Again, we talked about
Sell
Neptune and
out.
Hydra. I'm really high on Hydra, higher than most, obviously, based off my rankings videos.
No,
and
I'm
the
high on Hydra
comments.
too.
But I am very. So wait. Oh, Rex, what's your answer then? Ooh.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be initially Hydra and Neptune. It depends how Neptune grows into that
I like
duo
it.
ship if it happens.
Protecting
I
your
think
prediction
they
here.
could be the best, but it really depends on how much better Neptune can get.
So what's your answer?
Shots to Scump, I guess.
Oh my gosh.
Did we just become best friends?
That's so boring.
I do think Scump has
Come
pretty good
on.
fundamentals. I think Shotzzy is just an ice skater. I feel like they really could work well together.
Gold
Bro,
medalist.
Afro, did you not look at Afro's gameplay and then bring in Nasty? Dude.
Yeah,
They're
I mean,
gonna
I have
be
to look
nasty.
at.
Hard
I have to
agree
look at
right
more
here.
nasty gameplay to really give a good opinion about that.
Oh,
But-
dude, they're going to be great.
I mean, again,
Yeah.
Afro showed some insane moments and sparks, but like it, and he was again, his team was in a tough spot for him to really
He was
thrive.
atrocious.
So it's like maybe if you
And
put
he
him on a
still
great
shined.
team, then suddenly he's insane, which is
Well, yeah.
very possible. So
was
I
a
can see
diamond
the
in the
argument,
rough.
but it was a good dude to add there. I'm glad you added that one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You know,
here we go. I'm going to vote for Afro Nasty because I'm sure that's going to be the last because, you know.
AMs.
I don't think it's gonna be last.
Oh, look at this. 70% Shotzzy and Scump.
Shocker.
no one was surprised.
No one's surprised.
What are the
so,
other
yeah.
ones?
So interesting enough, 13.8% says Hydra Neptune, and then 13.2% say Huke Envoy,
Oh wow.
and 2.4%
No way.
Afro Nasty.
People keep sleeping on EU, brother. I'm telling you.
Irrelevant.
Don't
I'm
sleep
d-
on
I
them.
Dang,
am
it's not
marking
worth-
this irrelevant.
That's honestly though 2%, and that was you. One of them was you.
That
Wait, hold on. Can I make it 3%? Can I vote?
Do it.
Wait, how many votes were there?
now.
We have 167.
Okay, so it was more than just you. It's like two other
There's like
people.
five of us.
It's like a solid 5 of
I'll
us.
Whoever
vote
those other
irrelevant.
3 people are, though, you
Absolute
know what you're talking about. Watch it be
Legends.
Afro and Nasty and then Afro.
That's true.
I can't wait to go back. I'm going to screenshot this poll, come back to it a year from now.
When
and be
London
like,
are champs.
When London are champs, like,
Yeah.
screw you.
Well, boys, that wraps up the podcast. But I have to ask, I mean, what are you guys watching this week? You got anything on the Netflix playlist, YouTube playlist, anything you got going on? What are you watching this week?
I've been going down
Already.
the UFO conspiracy
Oh,
train.
no.
Oh no!
So I even got Showtime. There's like this new like UFO like docu series happening. I think only 4 episodes are out now.
Dude,
so
Ancient Aliens, dude?
it's not
Bro,
Ancient
that's
Aliens.
like-
It's just called like UFO, and it just like
Rex-
talks about like all that new stuff coming
Rex,
out
that
and
was
some
like the
cool
most,
looking
like,
videos.
You answer you could have ever
Dude,
given.
UFOs,
So big.
aliens are fun. Like they are just so fun.
It's at least fun. I can
Oh,
agree with it
God.
being fun. Shift, what,
That's
what are you
funny.
watching this week?
Yeah, I found this new YouTube channel called
Dude!
Perfectly Average
I
Golf.
love that
pretty,
channel.
pretty fun. No, I actually I have been doing so much editing. I've kind of gotten caught behind on my good guys. So
Oh, there you go.
I got some good either whether from their account or from their personals to catch up on. But for terms of shows, I've
Yeah.
been going back and rewatching Psych.
Dude.
Mm.
I love Psych.
Classic,
I love
classic TV
Psych.
comedy. So that's
I know,
what I'm watching.
You know that I'm not
Yeah,
telling
exactly.
the truth.
You know that's right.
That's fire. No, I mean, legit, like classic. Like I
No, it
love
really is. It's very good.
Oh yeah, big fan. Sam, what do you got going on?
I randomly this last week came across a blooper reel of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I was like laughing hysterically. so I think I'm going to
Always
start the show.
Wait, oh, but you haven't watched it.
No, I haven't.
Oh,
Dude,
bro,
you'll love
you
it,
need to
Sam.
get in on
Blooper
it.
reel.
Sam, you'll love it.
You'll love
Dude,
it.
And
No
so like,
chance.
I'm for sure going to start it.
Yeah,
But
it's
That's
good.
quality.
can't wait.
I even think it's up your alley too, like
it's got to be
humor
because like,
wise.
because like what they were like even trying to say, I was just literally dying. Like, what is this show?
Yeah.
It's outrageous in your face comedy.
I
It's,
haven't
it's-
watched it.
It's good.
It's awesome.
That's quality. I mean, for me, I mean, nothing much. I mean, I just watched the depressing, sad Nebraska game on Saturday.
Did we lose to Illinois?
Oh, we lost to Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
Which was,
no.
I mean, again, I told people to bet on Illinois because I was nervous. But other than that, I mean, I'll be watching college football this weekend, then the NFL next weekend. Lots of fantasy drafts.
Indiana,
this weekend.
Iowa.
There you go. So shout out. I mean, things we love to see. Beat Iowa. Let's go.
Yeah,
And let's go. So that's kind of what I got going on, obviously. And then just hanging out. Watching perfectly average golf, of course. I mean, that's what I'm watching.
New YouTube sensation. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy.
For sure.
I randomly came across it.
And now you're a
golf.
you're just diehard golf watcher, you know? That's how it goes. Bryson DeChambeau, though, rip. But yeah, so we'll see what happens. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Right. If you guys enjoyed this episode of the Best of the CoD Esports podcast, if you guys did, drop that comment down on YouTube. Hit that like button. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit notification bell on YouTube. Also, follow on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Drop that 5-star review. We appreciate that. And follow everybody. Shout out IHOLDSHIFT for coming on the pod. And of course, follow him everywhere like usual. Our fourth guest now on the show and our only guest on the show. Things you love to see on our 91st episode. So that's a pretty good ratio right there. We're coming to number 100. Yeah, close to 100. So things you love to see. Drop a comment below. We do appreciate that. But again, like and subscribe to the guys. Share if you guys really enjoyed it. But as always, guys, I'm Josh. Obviously, to my right is Bashing for Bo3 Sam. To his right is Alan, IHOLDSHIFT, and to his farthest right per use is Rex Shady Nero. And guys, we will see you next time. We out.